everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm responding to an email from Dan Dibble from Spokane, Washington, otherwise known as D2 because Dan Dibble. And I want to explore in this one what's going on with church numbers, statistics, temples, membership, and does this have anything to do with the times of the Gentiles coming to an end? Don't know for sure, but let's read up on it and see if there's seems to be any correlation between what's going on and the times of the Gentiles. So he says, thank you for all your research. I love your tracker spreadsheet. I've actually added more onto that spreadsheet because of you, Dan, and we're going to see that in just a little bit. If we lived closer, we would totally be friends, tracking ideas off of each other, etc. We think so much alike. And when you start laughing, I start laughing because I know exactly what you're laughing about before you even explain it. Well, not everybody likes it, apparently. A lot of times I'm called disrespectful and all sorts of things. But anyway, personally, I think I was sleepwalking through life until I saw Jody Stoddard's videos in 2020. Then I completely, quote unquote, woke up. And I think that's the same story a lot of people have in the church. Like I've said before, although I don't agree with everything in her video presentation, there's some things I think that were kind of imported from the non-denominational and evangelical Christian world. I will give her credit for this, that she definitely did, I think, wake a lot of people up. She brought things to our attention that maybe we didn't have on our radar before. And it's important, and it's pretty crazy that it happened in 2020. So I think that she's good. She's a good person, and she's done the best that she can. And yeah, it's basically the same story with me. I've always been interested in the second coming since a young age, but I just kind of felt, I guess, for the last 20 or so years up until that point that I saw the timeline videos, just like, yeah, things are, happening. There's a lot of craziness in the world, but I hadn't looked into it as closely as I have now because of that. And now I have a YouTube channel that I'm doing, and I'm learning so much, and I hope that you're learning along with me. So anyway, he says, I knew exactly what I needed to do, how to change, what to study, etc. I could clearly discern truth and lies, and my perception of life laser focused in on only what matters most. I have since studied most everything on the second coming and finally concluded that he comes tomorrow. So today I continue preparing. Yeah, and that's the best approach. That's the best approach. I think it's okay to speculate, jot down ideas, keep track of things, come up with different scenarios. But the most important thing is, are we spiritually ready? Are we following the direction of the prophet and the things that he's telling us to do? That's the most important. So, and he says, but I'm still fascinated with the subject. I don't know where I got the idea, but I pay extra attention to when a prophet quotes another prophet. I started tracking how many times President Nelson gets quoted each year, alongside Monson and Oakes, one up, one down. I went back a few years, and our current prophet gets quoted significantly more. This may be a subject you want to tackle for a future video. Yeah, maybe that sounds kind of labor intensive, but maybe there's a way that I could do that. Or if you want to share that with me, I'll share your findings, or I'll just maybe I'll do that. I was tracking earthquakes and natural disasters, but then I realized I was missing a much better marker, temples. Look at this graph, mind-blowing. Maybe another subject for you. Thanks for doing the heavy lifting researching such interesting topics. Thank you, Dan, and thank you for your support. Here's the graphic, and this is the number of temples. And again, it looks like an exponential curve. If you've taken algebra at all, this looks like an exponential curve. Now, I wanted to take a closer look at other numbers like membership numbers, missionary numbers. So I want to get into that. And then I also want to, again, refresh everyone's memory about the times of the Gentiles and what that means. So first, let's look at temples. So as of right now, at the time of this recording, today is May 21st, 2022, we have 171 temples that are in operation. The most recent of which is the Rio de Janeiro, Brazil temple. It was dedicated just a few weeks ago on May 8th by Gary E. Stevenson. We did a video recently how President Nelson has been delegating out these different dedications. Before that point, it was mostly members of the First Presidency or the Prophet himself. It's never really been so spread out among all the different members of the 12 as it is right now with President Nelson. But anyway, so we have two where the dedications are scheduled. In fact, we have one scheduled for tomorrow. The Yigo Guam. Yigo Guam is going to be tomorrow. And then, let's see, groundbreaking open house dedicated, scheduled for the 19th of June is the Praia Cape Verde Temple. So we have those two that'll be here shortly. Okay, and then we have a bunch under construction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40. Okay, sorry, I didn't know I'd be counting that this long. 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 48 that are 48 under construction currently. 48. That is incredible. That's an incredible number. I'm not going to count all the rest of them, but when it's all said and done, right now, between all different states, whether announced, under construction, open house, already in operation, when you add them all up together, there are 282 total in all various stages. The most recent of which, or the last one mentioned or announced in conference, was the Modesto, California temple. So it's a lot. It is a lot. Huge number of temples. Now, how's everything going as far as membership numbers go? Let's look at that graph. So here on Wikipedia, I've referenced this a number of times, both during the channel, during the time I've been doing the channel, and before. And it's a very similar graph. Okay, the temple is actually a lot more. It's like a much higher growth rate compared to this when you put it side by side. Of course, it's not like a perfect thing. Okay, never mind. I'm not going to say that because, okay, but you can see there's a very steep curve right here. But at the very top, it looks like it's starting to kind of slow down. If this was like a true exponential curve, this would continue to go up, but like that. But no, it doesn't. It kind of starts to taper off a little bit. We know that some of that is because of COVID. And we're going to read a couple articles, just some portions of two different articles talking about what happened. Look at the growth rate. This is in percentage rate. Now, this one you have to take a little bit more with a grain of salt because obviously in the early years of the church, okay, when you come down here, the average growth, the percentage growth, like for example, in 1830, it was 4,566%, but that doesn't really mean much because it went from 6 people to adding on 274 more people. So, you get what I'm saying? And as the church grows, it's harder to achieve those high percentage growth rates. I doubt that we'll ever see a time again. Oh, well, okay, wait, hold on. I better be careful because the millennium is just around the corner. And according to Brad Wilcox, about 2 billion people are going to want to join the church in one day. But between now and the millennium, I doubt we're going to ever see another year that's where we have 4,566% growth. So you get what I'm saying? So over time, as the church gets larger, the percentage growth goes down. And most recently, it dropped below 1 percentage point for the first time since I don't know how long, since the beginning of the church. In 2020, it was only 0.6. 2021, it was only 0.85. So it's slowed down. Another thing, this is something that I had kept track of for a while. I don't know how long, but when you look at, okay, this column, this second to the left column is the total membership. Okay. So maybe starting around the 70s, 78. You see how you go? So we're in the 4 millions in 78. So you have one, two, three, four. 4 years where it's in the 4 millions. And then after that, in the 80s, the early 80s, we got 4 years that it's in the 5 millions. And then after that, only 3 years in the 6 millions. And then after that, only 2 years in the 7 millions. After that, 3 years in the 8, 3 years in 9, 3 years in 10. And then it slows down, 4 years in 11, 3 years in 12. Let's see, 1, 2, 3 years in 13, 3 years in 14, 4 years in 15, and then 16, we're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 years in 14. Or sorry, 16, I mean. 5 years in 16. So it's definitely slowed down in terms of absolute numbers. Okay, so, and even before, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what would have happened if it hadn't been for COVID. But okay, let's move on. We got an article here from the Salt Lake Tribune, which always paints the church in a bad light. It says, see how much the LDS Church grew in 2021 and how the pace is still lagging. Okay, growth in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints rebounded last year after falling off a coronavirus cliff in 2020, but the bounce remained far below pre-pandemic levels. Now, to be fair, Salt Lake Tribune, we're still kind of in that time, even though things have kind of like gone back to normal. I think that what happens in 2022 is going to be a lot more meaningful, as well as the following years. But, okay. Overall membership rose by 141,737 to about 16.8 million, according to 2021 statistics released Saturday as part of the FAIT's 192nd Annual General Conference. 0.8% bump from 16.6. So 16.6 to 16.8. While that outpaced 2020's 0.6% gain, it finished far below the 1.54 increase reported the prior year. So that's talking about over here. See this 1, 2, 3, 4, the fourth column. That's what I was talking about before. You see how for the first time since 1937, 1937 was at 0.9%. Every other year after that has been at least 1 percentage point or more. In recent years, from 2000 down to 2013, it was at least 2%. And then from 2014 until 2019, it was at least at 1%. And then, yeah, since the first time since 1939, below 1%. Okay, but I think a lot of that can be attributed to the pandemic, the limit on missionary work. There's also another factor that we're going to read about. It has to do with baby blessings, because you'll see in just a minute. Okay, so Full-time missionaries started returning in stronger numbers after tens of thousands of proselyters were pulled back in 2020 due to COVID-19. The pandemic remains a barrier, but restrictions are being eased in many parts of the world. So, see, who knows exactly how that's affecting things, but it does seem like it's probably having an effect. So we're not out, we're not in the clear yet. The church noted it had 54,000 full-time proselyters at the end of last year and 36,000 service missionaries, up from 51,000 and 30,000 respectively at the conclusion of 2020. Okay, here are three graphs, the total members, and as you can see, it goes up. Convert baptisms have definitely gone down, and then children of record have also gone down. It kind of actually looks similar to the convert baptisms chart a little bit. Even so, church leaders apparently desire to see those ranks grow by much more. There were 67,000 full-time proselyting missionaries at the end of 2019. Saturday's conference speakers repeatedly emphasized the importance of young Latter-day Saints going on missions. Now, we've noted that on the channel, and we've speculated. Could it be the last push? Could it be? We've talked about maybe it's just because we need to catch back up since we had this COVID obstacle that we've had to cross. So it could simply be because the number of missionaries have gone down and to try and catch up from what happened with COVID. But at the same time, it could also be the final put. It could be all those things. Anyway, Saturday's conference speakers repeatedly emphasized the importance of young Latter-day Saints going on missions. Church President Russell M. Nelson called it, quote, priesthood responsibility for young men who can depart at age 18, and a powerful but optional opportunity for women who can enlist at 19. Thanks partly to its bolstered missionary force, the church saw an uptick in convert baptisms in 2021 to 168,000, a 34% spike from the previous year's 125. So 125 to 168,000. But again, way behind the 248 in 2019. So 2019, 248, 2020, 125, and then 2021, 168. Okay, quote, the General Conference addresses shared Saturday regarding the importance of full-time missionary service for young men. Independent demographer Matt Martinich wrote at LDSChurchGrowth.blogspot.com is likely in direct response to the disappointing missionary statistics and increasing opportunities for church growth in the near future. So taking these various stats into account, it appears the church essentially lost 115,000 members in 2021, whether through death, resignation, church discipline, etc., who had been on the rolls the year before. That amount, according to Martinich, is similar to the 90,000 to 120,000 dropped annually during most of the past decade, though that number topped 140,000 in 2018. He says, this indicates that the rate of deaths, excommunications, resignations, and removal of records for unbaptized children over 8 has remained constant during this time. Okay, so you can just factor this out, basically. All right. Now, this other article here, this is also kind of like a site that's not the nicest to the church. It's called Religion News Service. I've come across them a number of times. They talk about what's going on. Is Mormonism still growing? 5 facts about Latter-day Saint growth and decline. Number 1, the church as a whole is still growing, but the growth rate continues to slow down. In a time when other Christian churches are reporting actual losses of members, Mormonism is in positive territory despite COVID-19. So compared to other churches, we're doing good. We're not having um, total losses. It's still in the positive. In the US, for instance, the Southern Baptists have 2 million people fewer on the rolls than they did in 2006. That's a long time ago. 2 million people fewer than 2006? Holy cow. Within this challenging environment, the LDS Church continues to grow around the world and even within the US, albeit much slower than in the past. And then it has some numbers here, the same ones that we've been looking at. According to Christian Anderson, a biophysicist in Utah who follows LDS Church growth trends, even more concerning than the shrinking rate of growth is the raw number of new members being added each year. And here's a graph for the raw numbers. This is net membership growth in the hundreds of thousands. And this is what I was talking about before when I was doing this thing where it's like, okay, we were in the 12 million range for 3 years, and then 13 million for 3 years, 14 million for 3 years, and then we've been in the 16 millions since 2017. So he's talking about the same thing. Quote, the actual raw numbers are a really serious plunge, and it looks like that's going to continue for a while, he said in a Zoom interview, noting that the church has not added so few members to its rolls since the 1970s. At that time, the overall membership was only about a quarter of what it is now, 4.17 million. Excuse me. That's interesting. There's a 17 right there, 4.17. 4.17 million in 1978 versus 16.8 million in 2021. So the raw increase represented a much more substantial rate of growth overall. Okay, now number 2. Now this is interesting. The main areas of growth are primarily in Africa. Now this is interesting to me. The primary areas of growth are in Africa. I've pointed this out before on the channel. When we let's go to that one website, LDS Temples. There's this really good website, churchofjesuschristtemples.org. I like them. Temples map. We've noted before, look at the number of temples in Africa compared to Europe. And last I checked, it's actually equal. I'm not going to count it up right now, but it's equal. And the church has been in Europe for much longer, much longer than Africa. Okay, it only really officially got into Africa, I think, in the 70s after the priesthood ban was lifted. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that, but around that time. Whereas it's been in Europe since the 1800s. Right? So when we start to think about, or when we start to talk about the times of the Gentiles, right? We know that there's a lot of Israelite blood in Europe. It's been said over and over again. It's been said recently during the European devotional with President Nelson and Sister Nelson. That's a fact. And that's where the primary dispersion of the northern kingdoms went after the Assyrian conquest. Does that mean that they're righteous or that they're, better? No, not necessarily. But after that, based on what we've read, even though they're still Israelite, they've mixed in with the nations and they've essentially become Gentiles. They're mixed in with the Gentiles. They're in Gentile nations, even though they're still Israelite blood. There has been infusions into Africa, notably it seems in Ethiopia. We've also looked at the Igbos of Nigeria, which is interesting. I think that possibly is the reason that Nigeria is the largest country for the church in Africa. Nigeria has a ton. I should have pulled this up. Let's see. LDS Church population by country. Wikipedia. Let's just pull this back up again. So by country, let's do it by, okay, let's do members. So Nigeria is at the, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, at the 12th spot. Out of all these countries, Nigeria is at number 12. Before Nigeria, all you have is South American and North American countries, with the exception of the Philippines, which is at the number 4 spot. And we've done a video focusing in on the Philippines. See my playlist called 10 Lost Tribes if you want to learn more about Nigeria, the Philippines, and other groups. But anyway, so yeah, Africa is exploding. When I went on my mission in 2004, there were only 3 temples in Nigeria. There's one in South Africa, one in Nigeria, one in Ghana. That's it. Since that time, now Africa has caught up with Europe, and Europe has essentially stagnated. Now, there have been more temples announced, notably where I served my mission, the Spain-Barcelona mission. Barcelona is getting a temple, so I guess they probably still are growing, but Africa has quickly caught up. We've talked about on the channel how, okay, so I've noted, because I've come across these articles here about the Catholic Church. It says here, Pope Francis in Africa is the continent the Catholic Church's great hope, and I think it is. It'll be his 4th visit to the continent since he became the head of the Roman Catholic Church in 2013, compared to his 2 predecessors, Pope Benedict the 16th. Yeah, 16th, made during his 8-year papacy. The importance of Africa to the Catholic Church can be summed up in a word: growth. Africa has the fastest growing Catholic population in the world, while Western Europe, once regarded as the heartland of Christianity, has become one of the world's most secular regions. Okay, so these Gentile nations that have primarily been the heartland of Christianity, it's been big to the church. Well, it's one of the world's most secular regions. And again, it's interesting because this is where, as far as I know, there's only been 3 of these different area devotionals with President Nelson. Let me know if there's been any others, but there was the Kansas, Oklahoma, and then there was the European for all of Europe, the devotional there, and then one for California. Europe and California both have secular problems, right? But President Nelson spoke optimistically about both California and Europe, because even though they have big secular and worldly problems, they are big in the church. California has always had a lot of members, and Europe as well. And so, anyway, and many of those who identify themselves as Christian in Western Europe do not regularly attend church. In contrast, Christianity in its different denominations is growing across Africa. So this is talking about all of Christianity, not just Catholicism. The Pew Research Center predicts that by 2060, more than 4 in 10 Christians will be in Sub-Saharan Africa. That is crazy. That's crazy. Over here, there's another article. Vatican statistics confirm the Catholic future is in Africa. Okay, so, and then here, Sub-Saharan Africa will be home to growing shares of the world's Christian and Muslims. And here's a little animation that shows that. North America keeps going down. Europe really goes down. Okay. So if you want to read more on that, I'll put the links for those articles in the description below. Okay, now as far as our church goes, as researcher Matt Martinick has pointed out, on his LDS Church growth website. 8 of the top 10 nations in terms of growth were in Africa, with Congo leading the list, with a 29.4 growth rate over the 2 years since 2019. So yeah, in Congo, look at that, it's right here. Don't they have, okay, there's this temple, the Kananga Democratic Republic of the Congo temple, Lubumbashi, and is that it? Is this one right here? Oh no, and there's a third one, Kinshasa. So they're going to have, as of right now, 3 temples in the Congo. Nigeria also 3. Ghana 2. South Africa will have 3. So they're part of the 3 club. Let's see. I want to say Kenya. No, Kenya just has the 1. That's going to be in Nairobi. So, okay. Let's go back. The locations of countries that are losing members are more variable, with some in Europe, Bosnia and Herzegovina, France, the Caribbean, and Central Asia. In the United States, growth has essentially been cut in half. Growth has been cut in half in the US. We're seeing a 0.6 growth rate spread over the 2 years, whereas in each of the 2 years before the pandemic, 2018 and 2019, we saw the same rate over the course of a single year. And even that was a significant drop from the US growth rate a decade ago. Okay, I'm not gonna continue on this now. So I don't know. When we look at the world, we look at where you'd say Israel historically has been dispersed to. Europe, the Americas, including South America, because we know Lehi and his descendants. We have the Pacific with all the that have been identified as Nephites. Okay, the Pacific Islanders have essentially been identified as Nephites, including New Zealand and the Maori people. Okay, we have Australia over here, which is basically a breakoff from the United Kingdom, Canada, even South Africa. I think that's probably why it had the first temple. It's because of British colonization. So anyway, when we look at these different places where you probably have the higher concentrations of Israelite blood, it seems like it's starting to slow down. So could it be that the time of the Gentiles is over? Or at least the first part, the first half, the first 3/4 of the time of the Gentiles? I don't know. But there's some interesting things going on right now. And is it slowly shifting to where the time for this part of the world right here, Europe, North America, South America, is ending, and it's starting to kind of increase in other places, and then eventually at some point it'll get to the Jews in Israel. So let's read a little bit. Let's read a little bit about the times of the Gentiles. Okay, so we're in the Doctrine and Covenants student manual. Okay, I don't know if this is for seminary. What does it say right here? I don't know. But anyway, I just kind of did a quick search on the church website. So this is for Doctrine and Covenants 45 verses 24 to 30. What are the, quote, times of the Gentiles, and when are they fulfilled? President Joseph Fielding Smith explained that, quote, the times of the Gentiles commenced shortly after the death of our Redeemer. Okay, so after Christ died, all the way back then, the Jews, the Jews soon rejected the gospel, and it was then taken to the Gentiles. So they had the first go at it when Christ was preaching it. He was doing his ministry. Okay, the times of the Gentiles have continued from that time until now. Now think about in the Book of Mormon, Jacob chapter 5. It gives the allegory and basically the overview of what's happening and what the deeper the understanding, the basic problem. Okay, it's all about the original olive tree, the original roots. It's starting to die, having to bring in new life from other trees that were alive that basically gave it strength. And then those branches started to produce good fruit. But then over time, those original branches started to produce bad fruit again. And then you had to bring in all the original branches. So just go read Jacob 5. That's my favorite chapter in the Book of Mormon. If I had to pick a chapter, I would pick chapter 5 of Jacob. Okay, so the times of the Gentiles have continued from that time until now. The Lord said, "But many that are first shall be last, and the last shall be first." In that day the gospel was given first to the Jews, and then taken to the Gentiles. In this dispensation, it was taken first to the Gentiles, and afterwards it'll go to the Jews. That's in Church History and Modern Revelation 1:196. The times of the Gentiles began with Peter's vision and the baptism of Cornelius. That's interesting that you could tie it to a singular event right there, the baptism of Cornelius. Paul and the other apostles then began the great missionary work to the Gentiles, since the Jewish nation, for the most part, had rejected Jesus. As President Smith indicated, the times that the major gospel effort would be with the Gentile nations continued with the restoration. The times of the Gentiles will be over or fulfilled when the major efforts of gospel teaching begin to focus on the house of Israel, which it says here is the Lamanites, the Jews, and the 10 tribes. In the Olivet Discourse, the Savior gave 4 signs to indicate when the times of the Gentiles were over. 3 are given in section 45, and 1 is given in Luke's account of the Great Discourse. 1, the Jews will be gathered back to the land of Jerusalem. In April 1960 General Conference, Elder George Q. Morris of the Quorum of the 12 discussed this sign. Quote, "I think perhaps we may well now not continue saying that the Jews are going to gather in Jerusalem. I think now we may well say they have gathered." Okay, so as far as like the actual physical gathering, it looks like that's happened, and we've talked about that before because there's kind of 2 parts to the times of the Gentiles. One is that the gospel is being taken to the Gentiles first, but 2 is when you're talking about Jerusalem in the land of Israel, the time that the Gentiles have kind of overrun the land, but now the Jews have actually come back and established their nation. So that part you could say is done, and that it looks like that's what Elder George Q. Morris is saying here as well. The ultimate returns will come later as they develop this land and are joined by others. This statement by a writer is very interesting. Quote, "Strangely enough, when the state of Israel was reborn in 1948, it was a nation of 600,000. The same number which the Bible reports that Moses led out of bondage in Egypt." That I didn't know that till just now. That's interesting. It now numbers some 2 million, the same number which it is said populated the ancient kingdom of Solomon when Israel was in all its glory. That is why we may now say that the Jews have returned to Palestine. That's interesting. You have an apostle saying this. They're going basically off of these numbers and just, these historical facts. And right now, let's see what the population of Israel is right now. What is the population of Israel? Right now, as of 2020, it's at, well, look at that. Look at that number, 9.217. There's another 17. even though it's point. So 9.217 million. That's how big the country is right now. Sorry, as of 2020. Okay, and what was it here? He said that it was like 2 million at the time of that conference. So let's see. It now numbers some 2 million, which is the same number which it had. It is said populated the ancient kingdom of Solomon. So this is in 1960. Okay. It was at 1948, 600,000, 1960, 2 million. And now we're at 9 million. Number 2, it'll be in a time of great social turmoil. Well, if any time is a great time of social turmoil, I would say that right now fits the bill. One need only follow current events as reported in the news media for a day or two to see turmoil like the Savior described. Number 3, the Gentiles will for the most part reject the gospel. Okay, and weren't we just talking about that with Europe and America and just the world as a whole, except Africa? President Joseph Fielding Smith, writing about these verses, said, quote, "When the times of the Gentiles is come in, a light shall break forth among them that sit in darkness, and it shall be the fullness of my gospel, the Lord said in this revelation." The meaning is that when the time had come for the restoration of the gospel in the times of the Gentiles, that it would not be perceived because the hearts of the people are turned away by the precepts of men. However, in that generation this should happen, the times of the Gentiles shall be fulfilled. Number 4, Jerusalem will no longer be, quote, trodden down of the Gentiles. Again, President Smith explained, quote, "When we consider the words of the Savior to his disciples that the Jews should be scattered and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled, we have a fair understanding of the meaning of this." Verse 30 of D&C 45. In this revelation, Jerusalem was trodden down of the Gentiles from the day of its destruction, that would be by the Romans, until the close of the year 1917. There's another 17. So from the destruction by the Romans until the year 1917, when it was freed from Turkish rule by General Edmund H. Allenby of the British forces. After the war, Palestine became a British mandate. And I want to stop there because we've explored a little bit about British Israelism, and here, let me pull up my video. Let me pull up my video to illustrate a point here. Let's see. I'm going to search British. Okay, you look at this thumbnail right here. Okay, I did a video about British Israelism, and when you look at a map of the United States, and you look at all the different descent, like you'll go county by county, and you do a census, and you ask where they're descended from, Utah stands out. It like really stands out from the rest of the country because it's mostly British. It's mostly English and other. If you just the UK, let's just say the UK, it really stands out. So I'm going to pull this up, and I'll put this in the description below. But here you go. Look at this. Look at this graphic right here. Look at all the British flags. Most of the country, well, and it's not a perfect representation because this is going by, what is this based on? Let's see. Each flag represents 100 by 100 mile square area. So this is going by area, 100 by 100 mile square areas. So anyway, this is one way to visualize where most of the country is from. And you see all these German flags. Down here, there's a bunch of Mexican flags. Over here in the south, there's a lot of Irish flags. And then there is some British up here in New England. There's an Italian flag in the New York area. Anyway, Utah stands out, doesn't it? You have this like big island of British flags over here. So, and we know because they talked about it in when the three apostles went, when Elder Holland, Elder Cook, and President Ballard went to the UK. They talked about the fact that the British Isles are rich in the blood of Israel, and I feel like that kind of is shown right here in this in this graphic right here with all these British flags in Utah, right? So, okay, so let's go back here. So it's interesting that the British Isles, the UK, that's rich in the blood of Israel, they're the ones that helped to liberate the land of Israel from what before that time it was under the Ottoman Empire. So after the war, Palestine became a British mandate, and Great Britain, by proclamation, declared that country to be a refuge for the Jews, who were invited to return. It is very significant, however, that Jerusalem is no longer trodden down by the Gentiles, and the Jews are again gathering there. This is the sign given by our Lord for the end of the times of the Gentiles. So see, just the fact that all this is going on with Israel and with Jerusalem shows us that the time of the Gentiles is starting to wind down. And I guess it's been starting to wind down since 1917. We are now in the transition period. And shortly, the day of the Jew will dawn, and the gospel will be taken to them, into the remnants on this land. You guys, this is Joseph Fielding Smith that's talking. This is Joseph Fielding Smith. He says that back then, now when was he president? When was Joseph Fielding Smith the prophet? Let's go to Wikipedia. It says from 1970 to 1972. That's when he was president. And I don't know exactly when he said this, but I think I'm assuming that he was probably prophet when he said this. So we're talking about the 70s, the early 70s. In the early 70s, he's saying we are now in the transition period from the times of the Gentiles to the times of the Jews. Okay, so when Joseph Fielding Smith wrote those words, in 1947, even earlier, when Joseph Fielding Smith wrote those words in 1947, Israel had not yet been made a state. They were still under the British mandate. But on the 15th of May, 1948, Israel became an independent nation and declared Jerusalem to be their capital. In the war that followed this declaration, the Jews could maintain control of Western Jerusalem only. East Jerusalem became part of the state of Jordan. In General Conference in 1966, Elder Smith, now president of the Quorum of the 12, said, quote, Jesus said the Jews would be scattered among all the nations, and Jerusalem would be trodden down by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles were fulfilled. The prophecy in section 45, verses 24 and 29 of the Doctrine and Covenants regarding the Jews was literally fulfilled. Jerusalem, which was trodden down by the Gentiles, is no longer trodden down, but is made the home for the Jews. They are returning to Palestine, and by this we may know that the times of the Gentiles are near their close. Oh my gosh. In 1966. And where are we now? We're in 2022. We're in 2022. Okay, during the Six-Day War of 1967, Israel conquered the West Bank, including Jerusalem, and for the first time since the city fell into the legions of Titus, in 70 AD, Jerusalem came completely under the control of the Jewish government. Holy cow. So when we take this into account, these things that they're saying in the 40s, in the 60s, in the 70s, about being in the transition and the time of the Gentiles coming to a close, and now here we are sitting in 2022, and we're looking at graphs like this one up here. Let's go back up here. We're looking at graphs like this, and we see this little thing start to change. Instead of like remaining on this course, this nice, smooth, exponential rate right here, just nice and smooth, and then it starts to take a dip like this. And then we look at this lady's graph right here with the raw growth, where it's like, oh, okay, nice, and oh, and it starts to go down like that. What do you think? Do you think that we're near the end of the times of the Gentiles? What do you think when you see this happen? Moroni drops his trumpet from the Salt Lake Temple in the year 2020. In the year 2020. I want to see a picture of it. Well, here's him being taken down, I guess, in order for the trumpet to be placed back. Look at this, how his hand, like I did not know that the trumpet was a separate piece. Because look at this. His hand is intact. It's just that the trumpet itself fell out. Right? So this was in 2020 when all this happened, when church growth took a hit. Look at the symbolism of this, an angel that this is a symbol of the gospel being taken to all the world. This is the angel Moroni, the one who, the prophet that deposited the Book of Mormon in the ground to come forth in the last days, to be taken to all the world for the gospel to be preached, for the church to be restored. It was the main tool, it has been the main tool for the harvest. And now that angel drops his trumpet as though to announce to the world it's done, or we're really close to being done. Right? In 2020, when everything just goes crazy. So, excuse me, I'm no prophet, I'm no expert, but I know how to read things, and I know how to look at things, like how to see this happening. And when you put it all together, yeah, maybe we are toward the end of it. Maybe we are. Maybe it's just a few more years. I don't know, but I think that we're really, really close based off of what we read. I was going to read more, but I'm not going to at this point because this will just go too long. But there's more talk by Bruce R. McConkie here in Doctrine and Covenants and Church History Seminary Teacher Manual. I looked it up. I looked it up in the Scripture Citation Index. Orson Pratt had some stuff to talk about it, to say about it. But, well, okay, let's finish with this. Let's do Marion G. Romney. This is 1971, The Light That Shineth. And then let's look at the spreadsheet, because I did put the term Times of the Gentiles on the spreadsheet. Okay, so let's look at this. He says, I shall not recite what he said, meaning Christ, about the then impending destruction of Jerusalem. I do, however, because of its relevance to our present and future welfare, invite you to seriously consider with me what he said about the signs of his second coming, and quote, and the end of the world. As to these events, he began by saying, quote, when the times of the Gentiles is come in, a light shall break forth among them that sit in darkness, and it shall be the fullness of my gospel. That this prediction referred to our day is established by the fact that the quote-unquote light spoken of broke forth in spring of 1820, when the Father and the Son appeared to the boy Joseph, or the boy prophet Joseph. Now it's interesting because we just celebrated, just a couple years ago, 200 years since that happened. We celebrated 200 years since the light broke forth. During the years immediately following, quote, the fullness of Christ's gospel was restored to the earth through the prophet Joseph Smith. These great events were to and did usher in the, quote, the times of the Gentiles. That is, the era in which in this last dispensation the gospel is to be preached primarily to the non-Jewish people of the earth. So again, is that time coming to a close now? This time which the gospel is going to be preached primarily to the non-Jewish people? You will recall that in the meridian of time, it went first to the Jews and then to the Gentiles. But back to what the Savior said, quote, when the times of the Gentiles is come in, a light shall break forth among them that sit in darkness, and it shall be the fullness of my gospel. But they receive it not, for they perceive not the light, and they turn their hearts from me because of the precepts of men. The fulfillment of this prediction is painfully evident today. The large majority of whom the gospel has been taken reject it. Okay, so in 1971, he's pointing out the fact that the gospel has gone out throughout the world, and the majority have rejected it. And that's still true today in 2021, or sorry, 2022. It is because of this rejection, and not because there is no guiding light, that this generation has been, and unless it reverses its course, will continue to be unable to avoid the calamities foreseen and foretold by Jesus. Now, that has definitely come into force since 1971. I think that we're seeing that right now. For, said he, in that generation, that is, in which the gospel is preached, they perceive not the light and the gospel of Jesus Christ, and turn their hearts from me. There shall be men standing in that generation that shall not pass until they see an overflowing scourge, for a desolating sickness shall cover the land. And I tend to think that that could be referring to the coronavirus. Even though it doesn't seem like it was that serious, it did kill people. It affected the entire world in many different ways than just the sickness itself, but economically and politically. But my disciples shall stand in holy places. I thought of this as President Lee was talking a few moments ago, and shall not be moved. But among the wicked, men shall lift up their voices and curse God and die. And there shall be earthquakes also in diverse places and many desolations. Yet men will harden their hearts against me, and they will take up the sword one against another, and they will kill one another. He goes on and he's reading a lot of scripture. He says, some of these signs we have already witnessed, and others we shall witness later. And then he keeps reading. The righteous, however, shall not be cut off, listening to the promise of the Lord made to those who receive the gospel and live it. He does a lot of reading, just like me, on my channel. Okay, I think I'll end it there. Okay, wait. I bear witness that the fullness of the everlasting gospel is in the earth. The predicted light has broken forth. Many others of the predicted signs of Christ's coming have been given. Others are now visible. The rest are imminent in 1971. Okay, so now I went ahead and I put on my tracker the term the times of the Gentiles, and it doesn't come up a whole lot. You have it in 1950, 56, 58, 61, twice in 1966, twice in 1971, once in 77, and then after that, it's not said at all. It's not said at all. This is like one of those reverse ones. Remember when I looked up the phrase, the time is not yet, and how we hadn't seen that since like, I think it was like the 80s. Well, this is another one. This has not been used in conference since 1977, times of the Gentiles. So back in those days, they're talking about the times of the Gentiles, and now it's not even a thing. It has not been a thing since 1977 in General Conference. So just further evidence that maybe it really is quieting down. Maybe it really is. All right, I'm going to end it there. So hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it. Put your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.